Did you ever hear any voice that comments on everything that you're doing? Or even telling you to jump out of the window? Or maybe voices trying to convince you that your coffee is poisoned, so you argue with them whether to drink or throw your coffee away. You heard them. You believe you've been hearing things that others could. But what if you're the only one hearing them all along? That's actually one of the most common symptoms of schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a disorder characterized by disturbances in thought, emotion, and behavior, faulty perception and attention, a lack of emotional expressiveness, or at times, inappropriate expression, and disturbances in movement and behavior. Its spectrum is so diverse, to the point one patient could be experiencing a very different symptom from the other. Therefore, you can generalize people with schizophrenia to have solely one tendency and label a stigma on them. Sadly, negative stigma towards people with schizophrenia still exists within the society, including South Korea. As a response to the phenomenon, Korean Neuropsychiatric Association tried to erase the stigma by replacing the term 정신분열증, 두조현병, to refer to schizophrenia in Korean. Their attempt on erasing the stigma deserves an applause, since one of the labels put on the patients was criminal, due to aggressive and violent tendencies shown in some cases. Looking at the judgmental society, it is completely understandable if a patient refused to come out as a schizophrenic. Quoting a dialogue from the movie Words on Bathroom Walls, when you're a cancer kid, people are so eager to grant any wish you have, but when you have schizophrenia, people treat you differently. One of those people who once was afraid to show her face because of her psychological problems, but in the end confidently came out as a schizophrenic, is Choi Seung-Ja, an iconic feminist poet from South Korea. She made her debut in 1979 through a magazine entitled 문학화지성. She was known as a female activist who opposed patriarchy. The expressions used in her works were unusual, making her one of the pioneers who broke the limitation of expressions, style, and theme in Korean women poetry. Years after her debut, she underwent a hiatus to receive health treatment in Pohang Medical Center as her schizophrenic symptoms got worse. Choi Seung-Ja finally came back with a new poetry collection in 2010, and for the first time, publicly told her story as a person who's been living with a schizophrenia. In this video, I'm going to discuss how Choi Seung-Ja utilized her schizophrenic features as an instrument that allows her to express her thoughts and outlook on the concept of life. Therefore, the meaning and the background story of the creation of the schizophrenic features are also included in the discussion. In order to answer that question, I used Abrams' expressive approach that allows me to refer to not only the poet's internal aspects, but also external aspects in analyzing the poem. The poem we'll be discussing today is Pyeon-eui Jugeum, can be translated into two kinds of death. Just like its title, this poem resembles Choi Seung-Ja's spiritual journey in searching of the meaning of life and death by presenting two kinds of death. The journey is divided into three phases: the first death, the transition, and the second death. The first phase is about the death of a lodger in Cheongpadong. Cheongpadong is a neighborhood located in Seoul, and previously was mentioned in another poem of Choi Seung-Ja, entitled 청파동을 기억하는가. Through the poem of 청파동을 기억하는가, Choi Seung-Ja told a story about love, farewell, and memories, making her feel personal attachment with the neighborhood. This information plays an important role in discovering the meaning of the first death. In the first stanza, Choi Seung-Ja said that she received a phone call, informing that the lodger in Cheongpadong passed away. Then, she saw her breakfast, a bowl of rice and soup, reciting the lodger's words before he passed away. Looking from the sentences her breakfast kept on reciting, it is most likely the death of the lodger wasn't a pleasant news for Choi Seung-Ja. This argument is supported by the fact that Choi Seung-Ja had personal attachment to Cheongpadong, probably a memory that she wanted to keep for the rest of her life. If the lodger was presented as a fragment of her memories, the death of the lodger symbolizes the beginning of Choi Seung-Ja losing her hope on life, in this case, the memory she cherishes the most. From this argument, I came to conclude that in this phase, Choi Seung-Ja believed that death is the beginning of his destruction. Previously, it was told that in the sentence that her breakfast keep on reciting, lodger had been wishing to die. The word dissatisfaction in this sentence most likely referred to the socio-cultural phenomenon happening at the time in South Korea, such as phallocentrism, post-colonialism values, and authoritarian regime hegemony. Choi Seung-Ja was known as an activist, so it wasn't surprising to see her writing her thought on these problems. Moving on to the rice and the soup. These two play a bigger role in finalizing Choi Seung-Ja's thought on the first death as the beginning of destruction. Represented by the soul of Korean culinary culture, Choi Seung-Ja projected how the damage caused by death affects others. Aside from the Cheongpadong neighborhood, the breakfast don't have any correlation with the lodger, yet they were starting to get affected by the corrupted system, symbolized with dissatisfaction. The death also played a big role in internalizing self-abandonment in Choi Seung-Ja herself. After receiving the death news, Choi Seung-Ja saw her parents turned into fire and water spirits. This basically symbolizes parental absence in child life, adding more reason for her to give up on her life. Based on Confucianism values, the fire represented respect, and the water represented affection. Her parents changing form from a real figure into an unseen one is basically the same with vanishing, leaving her with nothing but loneliness. Moving on to the second phase, it tells the story of her searching for enlightenment, in this case, death consciousness. There are three important keywords in analyzing the third stanza: black ship, cosmic humidity, and extraterrestrial Morse code. The word black in black ship represents frantic feeling. This interpretation was adopted from its use in another poem of the same poetry collection, Sang, which portrayed Adam and Eve's fear and sadness when they were thrown away from the heaven. Meanwhile, the ship represents Noah's Ark, the spirit Noah's, his family, and the animals' lives. The ship that Choi Seung-Ja saw was meant to save mankind from the corrupted world, just like Noah's did. On to the next keyword. The word cosmic in cosmic humidity refers to every microcosmic and macrocosmic existence in the world, while humidity can be interpreted as life since the same interpretation was used in another poem of the same poetry collection, Kay 같은 가을이. The final keyword, extraterrestrial Morse code, resembles Golden Record, a disk being carried out by NASA's space probe Voyager 1. Golden Record contains pictures and audio files about the Earth. Its main purpose is to show the Earth's existence to extraterrestrial creatures. In this poem, Choi Seung-Ja, who saw the black ship soaring through the sky, played the role of extraterrestrial creatures. Just like Voyager 1, the black ship's main purpose was informing the mankind about the existence of death. By internalizing death consciousness in herself, Choi Seung-Ja started to develop a belief that death doesn't exist to vanish every living thing in the first place. On the contrary, death exists because it is an absolute existence. The final phase tells you a story about John Lennon's death. It was told that when John Lennon passed away in Manhattan, Choi Seung-Ja heard his voice singing a verse from his own song, Mother. Mother was a song that projected Lennon's trauma of parental absence, just like Choi Seung-Ja in First Base. The lyrics Mama Don't Go, Daddy Come Home that she heard was a result of primal scream therapy, which Lennon received in order to let go of his childhood trauma. The therapy aimed to recall one's memory related to trauma so they could let out their buried anger, frustration, and sadness through a series of hysteria. John Lennon himself sang the lyrics in 3 stages: normal intonation, slightly higher intonation, and hysterical scream. Hearing Lennon's soul singing this song represents Choi Seung-Ja's willingness to let go of her trauma so that she could start a new beginning, which made her see death in new light, a catharsis. From this discussion, we can conclude that Choi Seung-Ja is easily affected by her surroundings, but because of that, she could present a dynamic mind and character development throughout the narrative. She also used her schizophrenic features to enhance the poem's imagery and to project both her internal and external aspects. Seeing someone as brilliant as Choi Seung-Ja, I think we should agree that psychological disorder isn't merely a handicap. On the contrary, it's also an aspect that makes one's mind unique and creative. Thank you for watching!